Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video, and if you are new, welcome to the channel. So for today's video, we are going to take a look at some of the better Espers to reroll for, in case you ever felt like rerolling. But to be honest, in my opinion, I don't think that it's really necessary to reroll. But if you do have some of these Espers, then you can be assured that your early game is going to be super smooth sailing. And if you need a really short but step-by-step guide on how to reroll, you can check the link at the top. So before we move on with the content, if you found that you enjoyed this video, do consider subscribing. Subscribing is free and you can always change your mind afterwards. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, just because I don't mention every single Esper in the game, it doesn't mean that those Espers are not good. In fact, all the Espers in this game are either nice or they are niche. But as for the Espers that I'm going to show you guys for this video, those are really good in terms of their utility and especially their versatility. So they will cover the most content for you, which gives you the best bang for buck. And they are also super easy to invest in and need very little input to be very useful. But first, I'm going to start with the beginner banner, and there is one Esper over there that I think all of you guys should try to reroll for. And in the beginner banner, you will have a 1 in 3 chance to obtain him. So if the reason why you're here is to figure out which of these 3 are best for you, then stick around because I'm going to talk about Liling first. So Liling is a traditional DPS with a lot of strong attacks. So his third skill is a wide AoE attack that does a tremendous amount of damage, and part of that damage is also true damage. And his second ability is one that does a lot of single target damage and heals himself at the same time. And the cherry on top is his global leader ability, which increases the allies' attack by 30%. So he's definitely a very good early game Esper, and he's also a very good late game Esper because he's used in almost all content. He's widely used in early game PvP and in all the 3 ritual miracles. He also sees a lot of use in the temporal tower, especially since he can do true damage, which is based on the enemy's max HP, and since the temporal tower spots enemies with a lot of HP, this is where he can excel in a lot. And to add on to all these traits, because he has a way to self-sustain on his second ability, you will find that he makes for a very good EXP farmer as well. So he's a lot packaged into one, which is why he's on this list. As for the other 2 Espers that you can get from the beginner banner, they do not even come close in any aspects. Lewis may come close slightly in terms of his single target damage, but frankly Liling has way too much utility added into his kit. And now we move on to the video proper as to what are some of the Espers that you may want to reroll for if you do choose to reroll. So do take note that you can get multiple legendaries within your first 10 pulls. So let's say if you get Liling on your first 5 pulls, then your 6th pull would be in the standard banner, and therefore you will receive standard rates. So it is possible to get 9 legendary Espers within your first 10 summons. And now moving on to the list, we are going to start off with Sally. Do take note that this list is not in any kind of order, apart from starting off with legendaries followed by epics. So Sally is arguably one of the best supports in the game right now because her third skill alone allows your entire team to be so tanky by reducing the damage that your team receives by 25%. And as if that weren't enough, when the third skill is taking place, whenever any ally takes a turn, they will have 1 debuff cleansed from themselves, and they will also heal themselves for another 26% of their HP. Now, not only does she make your team so tanky with her third skill, her second skill also increases the attack power of your entire team for 2 turns. So she's very strong in almost all content. All PvE content is basically settled, and she's also used in some PvP comps, especially if you're running something more tanky. So there are 2 ways to build her. One way is to make her super fast so that she drops her third skill at the start, but I think the more common way is to make her super slow so that her third skill lasts as long as possible. So some of the more popular relic sets on her are Windwalker and Ocean Waves. Now, next up on this list is what I consider to be the best Esper in the game. This is entirely just my opinion, but he is none other than the Shimmer Net 5 Unas. So there are many reasons why I think that he's the best Esper in terms of total utility, but some worthy mentions is because he is the fastest Esper in the game, and on top of that, his third skill grants your entire team with 30% AP, also known as your action points or more commonly known as attack bar. And after he takes his turn, he grants your entire team with 1 turn of immunity, so he's a crazy good unit as long as he's moving very fast. And his passive also grants him a ton of speed whenever an enemy takes their turn, so he takes a lot of turns. And to add on to the fact that he's a super good battery, he also has a defense break on his first skill. So this means that in PvE, he can constantly put the boss on defense break, which will significantly reduce the amount of time that you need to beat the boss. And on top of that, his mere existence makes him an absolute cheat code for the Fafnir boss. So he's very strong in PvE, but he's even more exceptional in PvP. Now, being the fastest unit in the game has a lot of advantages in PvP. And now for the next Esper, and also the last legendary Esper in this list, we have Clara, who is hands down the best healer in the game, and also possibly the best debuff cleanser in the game as well. So all her kit revolves around her passive, and whenever she heals her allies, she then removes up to 2 debuffs on the allies, and if they are not debuffed at that point of time, they then get an immunity buff. And on top of that, if you overheal your ally, they then get an additional 120% of that overflowing heal into a shield. And to top it all off, both her first skill and her third skill heal her allies, and in fact her first skill heals 2 allies every turn, and her third skill not only heals all allies, but also grants them a 20% AP boost. And it is a cherry on top that she also has the highest speed in the game, except that she doesn't have the highest speed in the game when you compare Ascension. However, she's still super fast, which makes her an excellent healer for all PvE content, and she's also very scary in PvP when paired with other defensive units. And now onto the epics, we're going to start off with Asenath. Even though she recently received a very heavy nerf, she is still, in my opinion, incredibly strong, and I still use her on a day-to-day basis. So she's the Esper that grants the famous Lotus Mark. That is a buff that exists perpetually on all of your teammates until they receive 1 tick of the damage. And what the Lotus Mark does is it effectively reduces the incoming damage received by 50%. It also increases the AP of your allies by 25%, which not only makes this really good for PvE, but also incredibly strong for PvP, because in PvP, speed is always king, and units with AP manipulation are always good. And because the AP boost comes with the Lotus Mark, this makes her an incredible initiator. So the reason why she's so great in PvE is because she has Lotus Mark, and that works tremendously well alongside other better healers. So on one hand, you have an Esper like her that mitigates a lot of damage, and on the other hand, you can then have a better healer that way. Now next on this list is Eira. She's not necessarily as versatile as the rest of the Espers over here, but she does fulfill the early game really well. And that's because she's really good for the Chronos boss, which is basically where all the early game farming lies in. So she's going to be very helpful in securing a very stable Chronos run. And on top of that, she's also widely used in the Temporal Tower, which is quite nice. So her kit specializes in lowering the speed of all enemies and reducing their AP at the same time. And her second skill has the potential to make any of your slow Espers really fast. So she's really nice to have and really powerful as well, and you can also purchase her for $1 when you start the game. Okay, and sticking to the theme of supports, we have Hengyue, who is probably one of the best healers in the game as well. Her passive allows her to heal any ally every single turn, and if they are below 50% HP, they then get an additional regeneration buff. And on top of that, she has a 100% chance to dispel any buff on her first skill, and her third skill is basically a very big heal with a full cleanse on your team. And to add on to that, her leader buff, which increases her allies' HP by 24%, is also very popular, so she's a really good healer in all kinds of PvE, but she may not be that strong in PvP. And now for DPS units, we start off with Linxiao, aka the Tiger Mummy. She is effectively one of the best Espers in the game in terms of damage output, even alongside some of the best net 5s. And her specialty comes in her third skill, which grants her a 100% crit rate for 3 attacks. So she typically runs with 0 crit rate and a whole ton of crit damage and attack, and she possibly has the highest upper limit in terms of DPS because she does not need any crit rate investment. And to add on to all of that, her third skill also reduces the enemy's defense and slows them down as well for 2 turns. And her second skill also causes a bleeding effect on the enemy for up to 4 stacks of bleed. And her first skill then also inflicts disease on the enemy, which prevents them from being healed. So she's insanely powerful in terms of her output, and she's really good for all content. And the next DPS who also doubles as a debuffer, we have Sander. Now Sander is really exceptional in AP control. He's possibly the best unit in the game that handles AP really well. He's able to AP manipulate on his first and third skills, and on his second skill, he can also slow the enemy down while granting himself a speed up buff. So he's essentially the turn order king. And to top it all off, he also has a leader buff that grants his entire allies 25% speed in the Ritual and Sonic Miracles. Now, like I said before, he doubles as a debuffer, so there are 2 ways to build him. The first way is to make him a very speedy, high output DPS unit with very little focus on accuracy, because he's still able to land his debuffs every now and then, but because of his speed scaling abilities, he can do a lot of damage. And the other way is obviously to build him with high accuracy so that he lands his debuffs more accurately, but all in all, the main goal is to be strong in both of these stats. And now on to the final epic. We have Chloe. So Chloe is exceptional in PvE content. She is very powerful and especially dealing with small numbers of enemies, such as in the Sonic Miracle. She can potentially do a lot of damage if you manage to buff her up a lot, but that's not always a problem because her third skill allows her to steal buffs from the enemies, and this way she can potentially steal up to 10 buffs. Well, I mean, they either need to be unique buffs or stackable buffs, but still this makes her really good in PvP as well, because in PvP, a lot of people run with shield and immunity, so this is enough to strip all of the enemies' buffs and stack so much shield on herself. But of course, as your PvP tier goes up, she loses her value a little bit over there, but nonetheless, she's still going to be an exceptional unit for your early and mid game. And I still use her in most of my content anyway, so she is going to be highly rated for me. So that about sums up this video, guys. This is the end of the beginner's guide on who to reroll for, and if you get any single one of these Espers, even if it's just an epic Esper, they have so much value and they would make your early game so much easier. You can trust me on this that they will be so effective for your team. Now with that said, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content coming to you really soon. And this has been free to play, by the way, and as always, I will see you in the next video.